Hey, what's going on, everyone? Dominic, the Primetime Treasure Hunter here. As you probably saw from yesterday, eBay named a new CEO, former Walmart executive Jamie Iannone. You could see him here. He is scheduled to start on April 27th. Now, today is April 14th, so that gives us about a 2-week gap, and I figured it's a perfect time to put out a video memo to the CEO with a listing of 30 different suggestions to help improve the platform and the seller experience. This listing is based partly on my own experience selling on the platform from around 1999, 2000, and it's also based on feedback from you, from comments that you have made in my YouTube channel, in the comment section, in the live show chats over the years. I read all of those comments. It's also based on interactions that I've had with other sellers who run YouTube channels. And it's also based on comments that I have, read over the years that I have run the Facebook Reselling Resource Center, which you could see here. We have almost 17,000 members in the group. In fact, yesterday I put up this post, what the CEO of eBay should know, in which I asked people to put out suggestions that they felt the CEO should focus on to help improve the platform, improve things for sellers overall. Now, I couldn't get every single point into this list of 30. I searched for common themes. I tried to put things that I felt were more important towards the top, but there will certainly be things towards the bottom that you may feel is equally as important. If I didn't include something, that doesn't mean it's not important. I just couldn't get it onto the list due to time limitations. So if you feel something needs to be added, by all means, put it down in the comments section. If you are concerned and you're worried and you think, well, no one's going to read this anyway. In fact, how do you even know anyone's going to watch this video from eBay? Isn't this all just a giant waste of time? No, it is not. I could tell you 100% that eBay employees and even people at the executive level of eBay do watch videos from this channel, and this would be one that they would be particularly interested in, because if you think about it, we're giving them customer feedback. I mean, I could send it to them in an email, but I'm sure they're going to come across it even if I don't do that. So let's start here. Number one, again, not in any necessarily particular order, but sellers do have a very big concern in terms of the gross merchandising value, or I should say volume, going down over the last few years, meaning that they are not bringing in as many sales. And when sellers don't make sales, there's pretty much nothing that could get them more upset than that, because that's why they're on the platform. They're there to make sales. So when they have a bad sales day, a bad sales weekend, a bad sales week, a bad sales month, I hear about that. I see that. I hear it on my YouTube channel. I see it in my Facebook group. Now, again, don't get me wrong. There's things that sellers could do on their end to make changes. That's why I put up store review videos, but trying to be balanced here. And so there are also things that could be improved from eBay's end as well. And so many of the other points we're going to get to in this video could hopefully help turn this around and improve it. Because another thing that frustrates sellers related to this is that while they see that there are decreased sales happening over the course of a year, even though eBay's doing a good job bringing on more buyers that are registering for the site, but to a seller, that doesn't really matter if they're not actually making purchases. So we need to convert those people into people who purchase. There'll be other ideas in the video that can help out with that. But here's where the big frustration comes in for sellers, is that they see that eBay's net revenue continues to increase over time. Now, yeah, there's some stability at some time points, but overall, there's a general upward trend. Now, if you just saw the gross merchandising volume, you would say to yourself, well, how's that possible? Because they're not selling as much stuff. So how is the net revenue going up? That is happening largely because of ads. In other words, promoted listings. Who pays the promoted listings? Sellers do. So when sellers see, eBay really needs to understand this. When sellers see decreased sales yet increased revenue to eBay that comes from sellers, they're going to be upset about that. And I certainly understand that. And I certainly share that frustration. So point one really is this: there needs to be a shift here. Okay. And this needs to be communicated to sellers very clearly that the way in which eBay is going to try to bring in additional revenue streams is to increase the gross merchandise volume. Now, there are some people that say promoted listings should just go away. I don't think that's realistic, okay? I don't think that's going to go away. It's too big of a moneymaker. eBay's not going to cut that off. So if we go under the assumption that it's going to stay there, it's going to exist, how do we do things where that's still a healthy proportion of revenue for them, but at the same time, people who are selling on eBay are able to make more sales, and that hopefully that could be the bigger proportion of revenue for eBay, are fees taken out of off of the final sale, because we all know as sellers there are going to be some fees taken out. Now, some of those fees could be lowered. We could talk about that later, but that's where we generally want to see the trend go to. So that's point one. Now, number two, and this is something that comes up over and over again. It may even be the number one thing that comes up, which is that eBay sellers want to have more support in return cases when dealing with eBay. And there's a perception that some sellers have that eBay only cares about the buyers. They don't care about the sellers. Now, as a general statement, I would refute that. I don't think that is true. It's too extreme of a statement. But are there certain situations, are there certain instances that happen that would make a seller validly feel that way? There absolutely is. There absolutely is. And that does need to change. A good example of this is the video that was done by Nick and Andrea. I don't know them personally, but I did watch their video. I'm going to link to it down below. It says eBay buyer returns broken item. We ask seller protection for help. And it basically goes through this odyssey of what they had to go through eventually to get the return, and everything kind of settled in their end. But that wasn't until a follow-up video after this. At the end of this video, they were not satisfied, and there was a lot of bureaucracy they had to deal with, and just a lot of like scripted rules and things that they were told, and like a runaround, and things they were asked to do that then they call back and they were told they didn't really have to do that. So it was all very, very frustrating. So I have long argued that what needs to happen in cases like Nick and Andrews, which had to do with a $300 car part that was sent back to them broken, and then they were asked to basically, they were kind of left with holding the bag, in which they had to take the return until it ultimately got reversed. But that wasn't again until after this video came out. So in situations like this, where you have a top rated seller, someone with 100%, let's say, or close to it, positive feedback, they have a long history with the company, they're partners with eBay, they're a long valued partner. Now, sure, buyers are partners as well, but again, we have to take context into account. So if we have someone like that, top rated seller, all those accolades, and we have a new or relatively new buyer come in, and it may even be someone who has some sketchy returns in the past, and they try to make a return like this on a $300 item, or even any item. The money value shouldn't even necessarily count. Could be $50, $10, whatever. And the buyer is automatically granted the return with no context taken into account. That is going to upset sellers. So I understand that there's a lot of transactions that take place on the platform, and that there needs to be some automation on some level. But at the same time, there also should be, especially if there's an appeal, or if a seller wants to dispute something, they recognize, hey, wait a minute, I actually didn't do anything wrong here. This is something the seller's trying to scam me. They sent me back a box of rocks. They sent me back a totally broken item. They sent me back a comic book that's totally destroyed when I sent it out, in perfect condition. Those kind of things. There needs to be a better way to address these things by dealing with a human being on the phone who could reason through the situation. Now, eBay has put some good things in place to improve things if sellers accept free returns. Now, some sellers don't want to do that, but if you do accept free returns, there are enhanced seller protections that you do have, and those are improvements that have been made relatively recently. So I give eBay credit for that. They have done some things. They have made some steps in that regard, but there is still a lot of improvement that needs to be made in that area, so sellers do feel that they are more supported. It's a general theme that cuts across a lot of these items, is that sellers want to feel more of a partnership. Now, eBay's done a good thing, and they've hosted eBay Open, which is really for sellers, and they were trying to get out there to meet with sellers at different at different meeting points at different areas of the country. They are trying, trust me, they are trying, but that's why I put this video together out there for them and also for us, so they know some of the additional things that need to happen beyond what they are already doing. So that is number 3. Now, number 4, and some of these items will go quicker than others, but I actually talked about it a little bit in this video in terms of, different policies, different scripted procedures and things that eBay has. Well, this is something that has happened to me and has happened to many other sellers as well. It's a consistent problem, is that you call into eBay, talk to one representative, and you'll get one interpretation of a policy, and then you call back to talk to another representative, and they give you a completely opposite interpretation of that same policy. And then you might call back a third person and get another interpretation. So I don't know what's going on in terms of the training on eBay's end and how that is all handled, but there is a problem there, and there does need to be more consistency in terms of how the training is done, more consistent messaging, and more consistent communication of that same message and policy to eBay sellers. Because when there is less communication, when there is or not effective communication or inconsistent messaging, what happens is that the sellers are going to get frustrated. They're going to go onto YouTube. They're going to go onto Facebook groups, Reddit groups, and they're going to start talking about, well, I heard this from this person at eBay, and I heard the other thing from this person. That just leads to a lot of confusion in terms of what the actual policy is. So the more there could be a unified, cohesive approach to the policies and representatives' understanding of that, that could be really helpful. Moving on to number 5. This is a big one. I strongly support and endorse this one for sure, which is that there needs to be something done with how the eBay store levels are structured. There needs to be at least one more level added. I'll show you what I mean here. This is the level that I have. This is the basic level. You could see here, BIN is buy it now listings. You get 250 buy it now listings at a cost of $21.95. And you could reduce this if you pay annually, but then there's a premium store level, which gives you 1,000 listings, and that's buy it now, and that's a cost of $59.99, so $60. That is a big jump. And what I want to communicate to eBay on behalf of sellers, especially new sellers, we're small business owners, especially people who aren't doing this for a hobby, they're trying to make this more of a small business for themselves, is that small businesses grow in steps. They don't always grow in leaps and bounds. And to go up from $250 to $1,000, and especially to increase your monthly expenditure from $21.95 to $60, is not something most people are going to do. You could see I left a gap there. There's an intermediate gap. What needs to happen, I think, is something called, you call it whatever you want, but I call it the intermediate store level. This gives the seller 500 buy it now listings at a cost of $39.99 a month. Okay, that is a better stepping point for the seller to move up. So if they don't have that, what's going to happen is they're not going to strive for the 1,000 is going to feel too far away. So they might not think it's realistic for them to get to. It's easier for them to see that 500 and strive for that, get there, feel like they're safe there, settle in, and then hop on to the next stone to get to 1,000. So I believe this would be better for eBay, would be better for sellers, and would be better for buyers, because then they would have more selection, provided that sellers are putting up good items. Remember, all these 3 things need to be balanced out in some way. Sellers' concerns, buyers' concerns, and eBay's concerns, because eBay, after all, is a business. They do have to make money. They can't do all this for free. They're not a nonprofit organization. So all of those things need to be in sync in some way. Now, another thing, and this is moving on to point number 6, has to deal with kind of like freebies, perks, and auctions is one example of this. People want to feel like when they have a store that they are getting some additional value from it. And let's deal specifically on this one with auctions. And I'm not saying that they're not getting additional value with a store, but this is one where I think is a good place where some revisions could take place. And I'm saying this based on data. Okay, based on data, okay, what happens is that about 85% of, and this is based on the last statistics I know, might be a little bit different from what I'm saying, but approximately 85% of sellers use buy it now listings, and about 15% use auction. So that's the number I'm going to go with for this example. Now, right now, a basic store gives you 250 buy it now listings and 250 auctions. Premium gives you 1,000 buy it nows and 1,000 auctions. So they're basically even. But that doesn't really make sense because it's not consistent with how people use the platform from a seller's perspective. Now, at an intermediate level that I proposed, it would be 500, 500. What I would suggest is take 85% of those 250 listings and move them into buy it nows, and take that other 15% and leave those as auctions. So what that would do is give someone with a basic store 462 buy it nows and would give them 38 auctions. It would give someone with an intermediate level 993 buy it nows and 75 auctions, and it would give someone with a premium store 1,850 buy it nows and 150 auctions. That's just an example of restructuring the perks people get, so the perks are consistent again with how sellers are actually using the platform. That would be something helpful. It's one idea, one suggestion, and eBay could, of course, if they see this or when they see this, they could take that and apply that same kind of template or model to other types of tips. Another thing has to deal with final value fees. There are a lot of people who are frustrated with the final value fees and how things are structured with the store loads, because you're paying a lot more money as you go up, per store level. And you could see here for the final value fees, it's 10% for basic, but then for everyone else, it's 4 to 9.15%, depending on what category you're selling in. And so there should be a more consistent reduction in the final value fee. In fact, maybe even doubling the reduction in fees for people who have a store. So that's just another area where there are seller fees that are taken out, where there could be an adjustment based on how much you are paying. So you pay more for a store, you get a more clearly demarcated deduction in the fees based on what you're seeing at this chart. Like you could see here, some of the things are just the same no matter what. Like, how could it be that if you have a basic store that you are getting a 12% final value fee for music, books, DVDs, and movies, and it's also 12% if you have an enterprise store? Like, that just doesn't really make any sense. So there's a lot of restructuring that needs to happen, and you can see here some of the declines aren't even significant at all, like 9.15%. It's static across the board there. Actually, it's just the same exact thing. There are some changes, some things, but overall, there's a lot of things that are pretty static across the board. There really should be more value for in terms of other areas when you start moving up in that store level. So that's that one. Now, there are different options. Of course, all these things are not things that could all happen at the same time, because some of the things they're going to suggest are just different options. So another option that some people have suggested is just get away with all these different levels of stores and just have one flat fee. Like, Amazon, for example, has like a $40 fee, and you could just list however much you want. Now, there's, of course, other seller fees that Amazon takes out as eBay would, but just have one flat fee, list as much stuff as you want. A lot of people ask for that. A lot of people love that. And if that happened, that would get rid of everything else that I previously just talked to you about and suggested. But it's another suggestion a lot of sellers have that I wanted to make sure that I brought up. So that one is point number 8. Point number 9, and this is a huge one for me. I have talked about this before, and that is that there needs to be immediate payment on all items sold on eBay. Not just for buy it nows where you select immediate payment required, which really doesn't make any sense, because if it's called buy it now, that means you should buy it now. But I do a lot of offers. A lot of people do offers, make offers to buyers, make offers to watchers. There's a lot of negotiating going back and forth. But when someone accepts and clicks that they want to buy something, even in auction format, when that auction ends, it should just automatically be hooked up to their account so that the money comes out, that should be paid for right there. You cannot go on Amazon, for example, and make a purchase and then say, I'm going to pay for it in 2 days. That's not acceptable. It's very frustrating for sellers. As an example, and I'll show right here, this is an item that I did sell today. It's a Bob's Big Boy bank, and then last night I wound up selling this New Teen Titans shirt. But the problem is that both of these items are ones that I had to relist after someone so-called bought them but never actually paid for them. And that tied things up. Okay, so it tied things up because it's 48 hours until you could even make a claim for an unpaid item, and then the buyer still has several days after that until they need to actually pay before the case will close, and then you could relist your item. Well, I've just lost a whole bunch of days there in which I could have had cash flow coming in on those particular items, and just had things moving through. It did again eventually they did both still sell, but it's just a big enormous waste of time, and we really need, it's a big concern from sellers, is to have immediate payment on all items. Big problem. Also, what we would like to see is, and especially, I would really like to see this, is that there is more availability for us to send offers to people who are watching our items. So for example, you could have an item that you have up. I don't even know if I have an example of it here. I probably don't, but you could have an item that you have 18 watchers on, for example, and you go and send an offer, and you could only send an offer to one of them or two of them or three of them. Now, initially, you could often send it to more than that, but that second time around, and that could be 3 weeks later, you're basically only allowed to send it out to one person. And that is something that I think should change. I do realize that buyers don't want to get spammed, and that's a concern of them. But there should be a difference, at least between, one, like the first week that you could send an offer to them, and 3 weeks or even 4 weeks later, where you should be able to resend them an offer, because you might send them a better offer down the road. Buyers might even actually like that. So increasing things. I know eBay has made some improvements with that, and now you could make offers to people who actually have items in their cart, people who have browsed an item before. So that's good, but it is frustrating from a seller's perspective to see 18 watchers on an item and then have offers to watchers, and you could only send it to one person. So some improvements in that area would definitely help as well. So that's number 10. Another one, number 11, would be not allowing buyers to leave negative feedback to sellers before they have actually contacted the seller and tried to work things out. You will see this a lot in the comments in terms of responses from eBay sellers to buyers, in which it says, hey, I was willing to work this out for you. I would have made things right, but you just came out and left me a negative feedback. So make it automatic from an eBay internal structure perspective in terms of how things work with the feedback, is that they literally the buyer has to contact the seller first to try to work it out before they could leave a negative comment. So that is number 11. And now, related to negative feedbacks, neutral feedbacks, one of the things that frustrates sellers nowadays, and I remember the days when you were allowed to do this, is sellers are frustrated that they cannot leave a negative or neutral feedback for buyers, especially for buyers who have done some type of scam or have tried to rip them off in some way. Us being the ones, and this is what contributes, by the way, to a perception that eBay only cares about the buyers, doesn't care about the sellers, that we're the ones who could get a negative or neutral feedback, but the buyers can't. So that's imbalance. That imbalance needs to be corrected. Okay, now, if I understand that eBay really wants to make sure that the buyers want to come back, and maybe they'll be less likely to come back if they had a negative or a neutral or something like that. So at a minimum, there should be a way then, if eBay's not going to do that, and I hope they would, that would be my first preference, but if not, that there should be a way that sellers should be able to see if there have been problematic interactions with buyers in the past. Does this buyer have a high rate of making returns that are getting disputed or that are getting appealed, by other sellers? So a way to kind of peek in and see some of those metrics so we can make some better decisions in terms of who we want to deal with, especially if we're dealing with an offer situation. So that would definitely help as well. And related to that, it's also under point number 12 is to increase, especially if none of this is going to happen, if all of what I just said goes out the window, increase the number of blocked bidders that we're allowed to have. It's capped at 300, but if you have a big business, you're eventually going to get to over 300 people who you want to block as a seller because they've just done something in which you feel like they've been unreasonable. They tried to rip you off. They're making all sorts of unreasonable offers, lowballing your items all the time. You just don't want to deal with the person. You feel like it's almost harassing. So you block them. That's why blocking is there to begin with. But to have it capped at 300, I think is low. And I would say that should be improved. I'd say at least increase it to 1,000. That would be a good place to start. So that's point number 12. Point number 13, which is hugely frustrating and a big problem for sellers, has to do with not showing basically showing things as sold when they actually didn't really sell. They're actually kind of two separate points. Showing things as sold when they didn't really sell, and also not showing the actual final value sold price. So here, these are the two t-shirts that I sold that I brought up as an example. Now this one from $18.99 is $18.99. This is the one that I sold yesterday. But this one here says $18.99 best offer. This one, the person never paid for, yet it looks like it was paid for, and it wasn't. And so that could affect how we value our items and how we price them. So that definitely needs to be fixed. If someone did not pay for an item, it should not show up as a sold comp. That's just go away. Now, another thing is we should not have to go on a fishing expedition and go to third-party sites like flippertools.com, little plug for them, to figure out what the final sold price was. So you could see here we have a strike through. It says $18.99 with a strike through. That means a best offer was accepted, but I have no idea what it was. This now has to go back again to transparency. Sellers want to feel like there's transparency in the relationship between them and the platform. So if they feel like things are being hidden from them, and that brings me back to, the whole issue with promoted listings, if they feel things are being hidden, they're going to have more distrust. And so anything eBay could do to increase transparency is going to be huge in terms of improving that relationship between sellers and the platform. So that's a big thing as well. Another one, this one was put forth by Laura Cohn. I think her name might have popped up in the beginning. She's a moderator in my YouTube channel and in my Facebook group, is to allow people who have multiple eBay accounts to more easily toggle between the two, so you don't have to do like a whole bunch of clicking and signing out, signing in, that kind of stuff. And speaking of one click, this gets to point number 16. A lot of people want one-click vacation settings. Very easy. Click one button, you're out, you're on vacation. There's other platforms that do that. eBay is not currently set up that way. And related to that, by the way, and this is something I'm just going to add into this, if you have your vacation settings set up, you should not be dinged if your item sells when you're on vacation and you can't send it out. What eBay is going to say is that you should have changed your handling time. Well, my argument to that is you should not have to change your handling time if it says you're out on vacation from April 14th to April 21st. You should not be expected to ship anything in between that time just because of a technicality that you didn't change your handling time. In fact, because of this, I don't even use the vacation setting on eBay. I keep it on even when I go away. I don't even show that I'm on vacation, and I just changed the handling time because of that. But I would love to just click a button, I'm on vacation. When I come back, reactivate it. There you go. There's my listings, and they could all be sent out at that point. So, and sellers shouldn't be penalized again for things that they didn't ship out when they were actually on the vacation, because logically, you can't ship it out when you're on vacation, unless you took a staycation. But anyway. Next thing, the eBay app. I do like the eBay app, but you know, a lot of people who list from it. Now, I personally don't list from it, so this is for other people who've mentioned it. But they would like that app to be faster for listing, with more easier default listings for when they are going to do additional listings. So that is point number 17, is to make the eBay app faster. Use those, get those default settings so they're more automatic for people. Number 18, this is one for me. I realize this is likely not going to happen, and other people have mentioned this as well. I'm just saying I'm in this camp too. And by the way, all these things I do agree with. It's not like I don't agree with anything, but some of these things are more that you know, I really would identify with and say I totally on board with this. Is managed payments and not forcing sellers into managed payments if they don't want to go into managed payments. I'm not in managed payments. I don't want to go into managed payments. If I'm forced into it, obviously I'm forced into it, but that creates more of a friction between the sellers and the platform, because people in general don't like to be forced into things. They hate it. So as much as you could just keep that as an option, here's what I say. If managed payments is so much better than accepting things on PayPal, the word's going to get out on that and people are going to use it. That's like when I say the same thing about promoted listings. If promoted listings is so much better than not promoting it, put the data out there, make it more transparent so sellers could see that, not only within their own listings, they could even see it more, eBay wide, with maybe some studies that could come out that could show that from independent sources. That would make people more likely to use it. So again, goes back to transparency. That would be really important. So not forcing people into the managed payments program. Next one here has to do with the Vero program. If you ever get a Vero complaint, and I've had them before, it's very frustrating. The complaint here from a seller's perspective is there's really not much we can do. We're really kind of hamstrung. We could contact the person who filed the Vero complaint, but if they don't respond, eBay really pretty much says they can't really do anything for you. So you just have to kind of wait out if you wind up getting like temporarily suspended or something. And sometimes it's unjust because there are people who do abusive Vero complaints. Vero, as you can see, stands for Verified Rights Ownership Program. And basically, if somebody feels like you violated some kind of like licensing agreement or something like that, they could move to strike your listing down and it automatically gets taken down. But again, sometimes people are using it abusively and sometimes inappropriately, and they won't always respond to the appeal. Sometimes they will, and you get the Vero complaint removed, but there needs to be a more transparent system, a better system for sellers to appeal abusive Vero complaints. That's definitely a big one. So we're already up to number 20. This is a big one, is making listings available 24/7. And some people might watch this and say, what do you mean make listings available 24/7? I thought they were available 24/7. Well, there are some people who believe, and I don't know if it's 100% true, but some people swear to me that it is, that there are some points where your eBay listings are not visible. They're actually rolling blackouts sometimes that can occur. Again, I don't have that stated as fact as 100% verified, but my point is, if it's true or not, there's a perception out there that is the case. And for that very reason, there are some people that don't get an eBay store because of that. They feel like they don't want to invest in the store because they feel like their items might not get shown all the time. So if that is occurring, that should be communicated very clearly to buyers, and if it's not occurring, that should also be very clearly communicated that your listings are visible 24/7, no rolling blackouts at all. And people shouldn't have to feel like they have to promote the listings to make them seen in some way. And related to that, this is not formally on my list, but there were a bunch of people who also mentioned that they wanted to see improvements made with regards to eBay's search function, because sometimes people complain they search for things and it brings up a bunch of other unrelated things that they're not even interested in. So improving the search function is just an added thing I'm adding onto this list of 30. Another major complaint is shortening the return length, bringing it down from 30 days. Some people could do 60 days. This is, again, another point of mine, is use data to guide the policies. I personally, and I don't know anyone else really, who's had a return that has gone out significantly. What I mean by that, I've never had one. Personally, I've actually never had one gone out past 7 days. Most people I know haven't had one gone out past that time. Yeah, maybe there's someone you could say with an exception, but certainly not more than 14, not more than 30 days. So shorten the returns from, let's say, maybe a 5 to, if a seller wants to enhance it, to 14 days. The vast majority of people, and eBay has this data they can look at, are going to make a return the same day they got it. They're going to make, or within a few days. People generally should not need 5 to 14 days to make a return, but want to put it out that long. I mean, that would, I think, be even more than generous. The vast majority of returns are going to happen before even 5 days comes up. So that would be big, and that would also help address some abusive return policies that take place if you shorten the return time frame. So that's a big one. Another one that came up, this mostly came up from my friend James. James in the Facebook group. He was looking for better negotiated rates between eBay and USPS. And he cited some examples from Poshmark and some negotiated rates that they have. Is questioning if Poshmark could negotiate some of these better rates, why can't eBay negotiate some of those? And I know eBay and USPS does have a very close relationship, so that certainly would be a big thing, is to try to get some better shipping discounts for eBay sellers. That would be huge. Another one that came up, this one came up from Tim and some others. A lot of people hit, like, and agreed with some of these points. Allow buyers to request an invoice for combined shipping when sellers run a sale, so they don't have to keep having a back and forth with buyers to help them understand the process. It just slows things down. And some sellers actually report feeling embarrassed having to go through this back and forth with buyers. So that's a big one. That's number 23. Number 24, a lot of people get frustrated and report that there are sometimes changes that happen on their account that they did not agree to. So, for example, some people say that they have an item listed and they don't have it for best offer, and the next time they go in and a bunch of their items have been changed to best offer, and they're frustrated because they didn't put it that way. Or they didn't have free shipping listed, and then all of a sudden it's clicked as free shipping. And so, things like that happen. Dropping of pictures. A lot of people report that pictures are getting dropped. So some of these involve like technical glitches and stuff. Big problem if pictures wind up getting lost, deleted. That happened a few years ago. It was like a major thing where a ton of people lost listings. Big problem. So, decreasing that would also be huge. This one is my personal pet peeve. I didn't see anyone else mention this, although when I've mentioned it before, some people have agreed. Get rid of this click box right here that says stand out with a bold title in search results for $4. No one uses that, or almost no one uses that. And certainly if you do use it, it is not worth $4. This is the kind of thing, because I have clicked this by accident at least twice a year. And then I have to call eBay and get it removed because I clicked the button at the end to list it and didn't realize that it had a $4 fee there on the bottom. I was just going fast, didn't realize it. So that is a huge thing. With that being right there, you're going to tend to sometimes accidentally click that. If you're even going to put this here, put that more down away from a clicking area. Like you would have to really go out of your way to click that if you wanted that for some reason. But see, these are the kind of things. One of the terms I hear a lot of sellers use is money grab. If they start to see things like this, they'll have a bad perception of eBay because they'll feel like these are just little ways of another term that gets used a lot is being nickel and dimed. If people feel like they're getting nickel and dimed in sneaky ways, then they're going to get upset at the platform. And enough of these things happen, people get upset and they leave. And I think this is a time point, it's a tipping point for eBay that they could really make important improvements and important strides. I put up a video recently about how they've done a lot of things to improve things. 10 reasons why you should list on eBay right now. A lot of people are having great sales. A lot of people are now coming onto the platform, both as buyers because they're home more and they're looking for stuff. They can't get it on Amazon. And there's more people who are trying to make money by selling things on eBay because e-commerce is a big thing right now. People stuck at home, they need a way to make money. They're listing things. So making improvements like this, making things more transparent, making big strides like this, it could be absolutely huge in turning things around. And, that kind of brings me back to this to this gross merchandising volume in the beginning. All these things that I'm mentioning so far are ways that could improve this and improve those sales over time. So everybody wins. eBay wins, sellers win, and buyers win as well. A couple more things, and this one here has to do with marketing. This one is number 26, I think we're at. Yep, is spending more money marketing. We want you back. Put some more ads on television right now. Like, this would be a perfect time. I know there's been some radio spots that eBay's done. I've seen a few eBay ads in here, but put some ads out there, not just saying, hey, eBay has this stuff. Put ads out there saying, we want you back. Buyers, sellers, we want you back. You have stuff around. Put an ad up right now that shows a mom at home looking through things in her closet. She didn't realize there was value. She puts it on eBay, show those cha-ching sounds going off, show her smiling. She's happy. She has a bunch of cash in her hands that she could spend now. She gets extra things now, extra groceries, whatever it is. She's happy. Put a dad up that's doing that. Put up a young enterprising guy or girl who's starting off a business. Say, we want you back, or we want you on here. This is a great forum. Put some things up for new buyers. Show them, hey, listen, remember us, remember eBay. Like, make it a specific point that that you're aware that there are some people that forgot about eBay, and that they're still around. They're still there. I've talked to so many people who are just like family members, regular people that I just know who don't do anything with reselling. I say, hey, I just saw you went straight to Amazon. Why didn't you go straight to eBay? And it's say, well, I don't know, I don't really think of that anymore. It's just, isn't that kind of old? So it needs to become more fresh, more cool, more current, more in people's minds. So more more marketing could really help with that. Number 27, I kind of talked about this earlier, but more perks for store owners. So I talked about that in terms of like fees and stuff like that. But things like, if you are spending $60 a month for a store or more than that, and you want to put an auction up. Let's say you do an auction. I do some every once in a while. You want to put an auction up and you want it to be, let's say, you want it to go up at 10 o'clock at night. Okay? So you're going to have to pay a 10-cent fee for that. Well, can't that be something that could be waived? You're paying $60 or you're paying more than that. That seems like a very minor thing to have to pay a 10-cent fee for. And again, this gets back into that, whole nickeling and diming and, feeling like there's, everything is kind of being built off the backs of the sellers. Cut some of that stuff out. There's some of that, what I would just call almost like red tape. Cut some of that stuff out. And, that will make that'll make sellers feel like you're in more of a partnership with them if they don't see those tiny little fees adding up for some of those types of things. In terms of buyers, number 28, cracking down on buyers who make excessive returns and cancellations. There are many businesses online that have models like that in place for people who are, abusive with the return process, and that they're automatically flagged out before they even get to a seller to make a complaint. Sellers, you should know you can call eBay, and you could ask them to look into a particular buyer who's making a return claim on you to see if there's been any similar kind of spotty claims in the past. But it would be helpful if that type of stuff could be proactively addressed on eBay's end to weed some of these people out. I'm not saying that's not happening at all. It might be happening on some level on eBay. But again, some of this stuff just needs to be more clearly communicated to eBay sellers so that we're aware of that. Next one, number 29. This comes from my friend Neutron Bomb, a great YouTube channel. Allow people to get top-rated seller status back faster if you got knocked off because you made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. There can be grace periods. We know there could be grace periods because right now, eBay did a good thing during the pandemic for a 90-day period in which they won't let people's seller status get knocked down if you make a mistake. So give people a little bit more grace or shorten the time frame in which they could get that top-rated seller status back. Again, that will help improve the perception of partnership. And that gets to my last point here, and it has to do with partnership. I've talked about this a few times, is that we are partners with eBay. And I think that there should be some form of eBay seller representative who reports to eBay. Now, I'm not saying they're on the board of directors. I don't think that's reasonable, but that there's someone that reports to. Like, for example, I currently serve on the board of directors for a National Neuropsychological Association, and we have students who we want to make sure we're paying attention to. Graduate students, for example, people on internship, people on postdoctoral fellowships. We want to make sure we are paying attention to them, and so we actually have a student representative who is not a voting member of the board, but reports to the board. So something like that, would be really, really important in terms of, forming a stronger partnership between the eBay sellers and the eBay platform, the board, that type of thing. So that's the long list of 30 points. I know it's a lot of stuff. Hopefully, again, this does get to the CEO one day. Again, if there's things that I missed, and I'm sure there's things I didn't list that you're thinking of, go put them down in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you pass it on to anyone else who you think may like it. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are not a subscriber. And make sure you come over tomorrow night. I'm going to do a special show Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 15th on mental health in reselling. We're going to be covering mood disorders. And also make sure you come over to my Instagram account. That's at prime_time_treasure. I will see you all back at the next video, everyone. Take care.